Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Aaron Urban. Very excited to have you join me today because today we're going to be talking about some very important, fundamental, foundational elements of what it takes for you to see massive success, and most importantly, massive success through small, important, focused items. Not everything, not just being busy, not just going about it spinning. You know how we do oftentimes in life. We're just spinning. We're doing all the things. We're keeping ourselves busy. We're trying to work really hard. And also just sharing with my awesome guest backstage, working really hard is not the answer. It never was. But here's the thing. I want to help you unlearn those old myths that are holding you back so you can set yourself free. Let go of what is not serving you so you can focus on the right actions for the right results. So as you tune in, come on in, say hi, say where you're from. I'd love to welcome you to the show. So today we'll be talking about how to get success and leverage your authentic zone of genius. How to create the right mindset to fuel the right actions that yield the right results. And today our special guest is Curt Mercadante. Now, Curt, I love Curt. He's been a friend and a fellow colleague for a couple of years now. And one thing I know about him is he has a system, just like I do, that helps us leverage our authentic zone of genius. Because one thing to talk about mindset, and it's another thing to actually live it. It's one thing to set your 2022 goals, and it's yet another thing to create action. And it's one thing to get results in your career, but it's another to get the right results. Because you can get some results in your life, but they may not be the ones that you want. So come on in, say hi, say where you're from, because I know you are ready to start living your best life. So get your coffee cup ready, because for 25 years, Curt has counseled small businesses, entrepreneurs, as well as some of the largest corporations and associations in the country. He's a certified human behavior consultant, founder of the Freedom Media Network, and author of his best-selling book, 5 Pillars of the Freedom Lifestyle. And give me a round of applause. Da-da-da. We're going to welcome Curt to the show. Hey, Curt. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, Aaron. I am awesome. Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yay. Excited to have you on the show today. And as folks tune in and they start hopping on the show, please don't be shy. Share with us your questions. What's working for you? What's not working for you? We want to hear from you, because whether you're watching now or tuning in to replay later, we're here to help you thrive. Right. So it's great for us to talk about what works for us, but we're here to help you thrive. And I know, Curt, we were just sharing backstage, hey, as entrepreneurs, we really truly do need to focus. I mean, everybody needs to focus on the right actions for the right results. And Curt, don't you feel like there's a lot of propaganda out there about, oh, well, if you do this program, or if you do this 20,000 complicated step thing over here, you'll get results. Or if you work really hard, surely you'll be noticed for your hard work. All these myths. Don't you feel like there's a lot of that floating around out there right now?
Well, absolutely. I think that there are people who think that to build an authority brand, they have to make their offering seem so complicated that their clients can't understand it. And so they'll part with money because they're like, wow, this is so complicated. I don't understand it. It must be worth a ton of money.
Right.
And so they pay for it. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And one of my very favorite quotes is from Bruce Lee. When they asked Bruce Lee his key to success, he said, the key is not in the daily increase, it's in the daily decrease, hacking away at the unessential, because the closer you get to the source, the less wastage there is. And with my clients, we work on something I'm finding what I like to call, in the startup world, there's minimally viable product. Mm-hmm. What I like to work with my clients is minimally viable inputs. Now, this doesn't mean being lazy, but I'm a fan of minimal effort for the exact reasons that you're talking about. When I ran high school cross country and track, they would bring us to the track and they would have us run maybe 40, 50 yards and they would videotape us. And then they would analyze everything, your stride length, if you're moving your arms. I had this because I saw some Olympic runner doing it where I would, on the final stretch, do something crazy with my head because I saw someone else doing it. So it must be the right way.
Right.
And I resisted. I said, this is my natural essence. This is how I run. And the coach is like, okay, if you want to give up excess energy, but the best way to run your best race is to get there in the shortest, simplest, straightest line. Do you want to do that?
Absolutely.
And so getting rid of that excess energy, the excess motions, all of that crap that we pile in because we think more equals better is key. And I think exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the proverbial head right there, Curt. I love that because we think more is better, but it's really not. And I love Bruce Lee's quote, hacking away at the non-essentials. I want to welcome Cornesia to the show. Great to see you this morning, Cornesia, tuning in from the Woodlands, Texas. And again, as you hop in, if you happen to just be listening in as you're working, don't feel free to type in a note because I want to welcome you to this show and make you feel at home because this is what it's all about, to help you thrive. Yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone tuning in now or later. What do you feel like? Do you feel like you're doing just the essentials and really focus? Because chances are, if you're a normal human being like me, you sometimes get distracted. We get distracted by the bright, shiny objects. Like, oh, well, that seems really nice. Someone over there is doing this. I have comparisonitis. I'm admitting this. live on my show. I have a little bit of comparisonitis because it's normal for us human beings to compare what other people are doing. Say, oh, wow, yeah, this person's doing that. That must be the way I should do it. Not always. How do you feel about that, Curt?
Yeah, well, it leads to us, I watched that Olympic runner, right? And he did this and this. Now, he was running well despite giving up his excess energy.
Right.
There's a lot of that, on social media, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, et cetera. We look at what other people are doing without realizing that, we have our unique behavior and communication styles, our unique superpowers. So what works for someone else may not work for us. We also have to realize that there's a lot of people who are completely full of it when they post, right? And they're talking about how successful they are, but they're a coach with no clients, but they get 1,000 likes. And then that can lead to imposter syndrome. It's funny. It's the new sport on LinkedIn is to complain about other people's content as if that's going to build your brand. But really, oh my gosh. There's some people, there's one guy, I really love him. He is a wonderful sales professional and trainer. Every other day he's posting about how much he hates LinkedIn polls. Now, there are people who do LinkedIn polls like, hey, do you prefer Coke or Pepsi? Do you prefer red or blue or whatever? Okay, great. I got 40 leads, 5 calls, and 3 new business proposals out from a LinkedIn poll I did Sunday that took me 5 minutes. So if I paid attention to those people, I might have missed out on that. So do what works for you, learn, grow, and optimize, be consistent. And yeah, it's important to take counsel from other people. But in the end, you have to be, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's your business, be your own advocate, be your own expert, be the physician for yourself, not just physically, and really show as much concern. I posted this on LinkedIn. My goodness, if people cared as much about their own lives as they do about celebrity deaths, the world would be a much different place. But people are,
and not to diss Betty White, by the way. That's not what we're talking about.
And it was that, and then you see other. It's like the end of the year. All of a sudden, maybe there's something there in the universe, but ton of celebrity deaths come.
Yeah, there was a lot, actually, quite a few. But you're right. You're onto something there. My phrase used to be, people spend more time planning their vacations than they do their careers, and I feel that's very true. The first step, by the way, for any of you wondering mountain zone of genius, and okay, where do you even start? Understanding that authentic self, like how you need to show up, is really understanding yourself. And I think, Curt, that's where a lot of people just miss the bus. They do. They try to skip that step. They try to skip, I don't need to know me, I just need to do these actions. Or they don't even realize they need to know who they are They need to know how to show up authentically, and in order to show up authentically, you need to know what that authentic self is in the first place. You need to know what your core values are, your priorities, how you show up, where your strength zones are. I mean, you need to know all of that. And if you don't, you can't key into it. It's just impossible. You cannot grow what you don't know. So understanding self is step number one on the journey to creating that beautiful place where you're in your zone of genius, you're doing the right actions for the right results. You're not just spinning, you're not just busy, which is somewhat of a status symbol. Don't you feel, Curt, it's a little bit of a status symbol when someone asks you, how are you doing? And you go, oh gosh, I'm just so busy. And as Dory Clark said in her TEDx Boston talk, that's another way of saying, oh, I'm just so important. Look at me.
Yeah, no one really actually believes that. Like you think you're getting props. You think you seem important. You think you're getting a bozo button from it. I'm dating myself by saying bozo button. You're getting an award or a cookie, and really people are looking at you like, give me a break. Or they look at you saying, well, you don't know how to prioritize. My wife had a client who would never show up. My wife's a speech language pathologist and would never show up, would never do the work, who claimed, oh my gosh, she was doing this for her daughter and I got to get help for my daughter. But she would cancel at the last minute. And every time she would do it, she would ratchet up the level of how she described how busy she was. It started out, oh, I'm busy. Oh, I'm swamped. And then it went to, I'm in the depths of hell. And then it just keeps ratcheting it up and up like, oh my gosh, you must be so busy. And really, you got to realize that the rest of the world is looking at you like, you look haggard, you look haphazard, you look frazzled, you don't look important when you do that. And we all know that it's just a lack of priorities. And right. when you talk about knowing yourself, it's so important. However, we have to know our true self versus what's just our ego, what's our personality. In one of my boot camps and with some of my clients, we start out literally the first slide is a big circle. And I ask them, what is that? And it's interesting hearing what they say it is. And really what it is a zero, because we all are big zeros, right? And we've come in our society to think, oh, being a big zero, that's an insult. But when we come out of the womb, we're a zero, right? We come from nothingness and we are more of a void. Over time, however, that empty vessel gets filled in with programming, that computer programming, so that by the time we're 35 years old, 95% of our cognition of ourself, of what we think is ourself, is subconscious programming. Now, some of that's good, right? If I breathe and I'm not doing, say, Wim Hof breathing exercises, it's subconscious. That's not bad. But if I watch like a show like Shark Tank, and I'm like, and all of a sudden I just find myself saying, those fat cat rich people, they don't need anything else, right? That's probably because a parent said it, or someone, a peer, a boss, right? But when we want to make a positive change, and this goes directly to what you're talking about, come out January 1st with our big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And our resolutions, and we're motivated and we have this willpower. Well, that's our conscious mind making that decision. And we have to realize that that's only 5% of us, of our cognition, of our behavior. Right. Well, 5% versus 95%. This is why gyms are full January 1st and they're empty by the end of the month, because you're relying on conscious only.
Right.
So one of the keys that I teach, and I do, and I know you do it too, is getting back to zero. We teach emotional freedom technique, Ho'oponopono, which is an ancient Hawaiian practice of getting back to zero, so that you become that void. You explore it to get back to zero, to strip away the programming, to strip away your ego, which is an illusion. It's not bad. It's just an illusion based on what people have told you are, what you've picked up along the way, to get back to that true self so you can build up from there. And last thing, one thing I ask my clients is, imagine you're sitting on your couch. You're like, it's the middle of the day, it's a hot day, and you're like, I want to go get a nice, refreshing glass of water in my favorite glass. And you go into the kitchen, and your favorite glass is there, and it's filled with dirt because your kid was using it in the garden to garden and everything, right? Would you take water and pour it on top of the dirt and then drink it? Of course not. You're drinking mud. You have to empty out the mud or the dirt. You got to clean it out before you put the water in. And that's the problem with just just positive intention alone. Oh, it just takes positivity and a positive mindset. Well, if you don't clear out the dirt, what you're doing is just pouring the positive.
You're creating mud.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You got to clean it out. You got to go back to zero, clean it out. So then you can fill back in those positive thoughts. Otherwise, you're just mixing the good with the bad. You're creating more mud in your day.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great analogy. It's a great analogy because as you may have heard, I coach on a technique called mindlessness, which is really lowering the thought process, lowering the agitated brainwave states. This is basically what's going on. Because particularly right now, with all the disruption that's going on, the rate of innovation is extremely steep. All the change we're experiencing, if you will, pardon the phrase, but the cup runneth over. It's a little overused, but it's true. Our cups are very full. So what's happening is we have a lot of agitated brain waves. We're waking up in the morning feeling anxiety first thing before we get out of bed. I mean, all this stuff is floating around our heads like buzzing bees. And it's important to clear that because you cannot focus. You cannot show up 100%. You can't even decide what the right actions are for yourself because you've got so much clutter in the way of you seeing very clearly.
Yeah.
In order to see clearly, you need to become quiet. I mean, and you see that in a lot of different practices, whether it be the yoga practice, whether that be religious practice, you see the same theme, and it's not there by accident. It is because the way we are wired, in order for us to see things clearly, we need to come back to zero. Absolutely. We need to reduce the thinking levels. We need to clear the space. We need to clear the clutter. And in order for us to show up 100%, if you just build on mud, to your point, that's not helpful. That's just making things messy and complex and your false starts. So that's, you're absolutely on point. Now, Hussein has in his typical fashion, very intellectual response here, which I'll show very quickly on the screen. It's quite a bit. So what I'll do is I'll help our listeners or those just tuning in to the podcast later. So basically what he's done is he said, I'll read the whole thing here. Hussein says, a topic worthy of discussion. Thank you for bringing it up. From my point of view, the correct procedures give the correct results. Yes. Particularly if it's technical work, meaning the next step is not complete unless the previous step was correct and so on. So basically focus on the right actions for the right results. In the business world, the presence of the right procedures leads to correct results, but the results are linked to events such as economic politics and others because we don't know about the unknown. So we're talking about environmental influences. The science of crisis management may limit or reduce the size of loss or prevent it. So being aware of having processes in case of these instances. Therefore, the business world, management's leadership skills give more weight to achieve correct results according to the correct procedures. He really thinks through these things. So yes, you're right, Hussein. Right actions yield right results. And also being aware of environmental influencers, which leads me to my second point. So once we understand self and we understand that we need to create space, to Curt's point, come to the 0 point or reduce thinking levels, clear space, create clarity, we also need to be adaptable. So particularly right now, we're hearing a lot about resiliency. Resiliency is not true grit, not to be confused, just plowing through and doing the whatever action because for the sake of action to hope to net some sort of result, which may not be the result you want, but it's more about adaptability and flexibility. And without that clarity, that zero that you mentioned, Curt, it's very difficult to be adaptable and flexible because you're playing in the mud, basically. I want to say hi to Mary Alma. She's tuning in from YouTube. Great to see you today. So yeah, what are your thoughts about that? Having that adaptability and flexibility in the moment to move with the environment.
Yeah, no, I think that's key. I think, there's a lot of, I call them the hustle and grind pornographers. They're the people who espouse the opposite of what we're talking today. And I ask people, think of yourself as water in a mountain stream and you're flowing and all of a sudden there's boulders that come off the mountain into the stream, right? Those boulders are challenges in your business, relationships, self-care, whatever it is, right? Now, the hustle and grind pornographers would have you swim to those boulders and start punching them and headbutting until you're bloody. And if you say, my gosh, I tried, but it just hurts and it's not working, they'll say, give me some more money and I'll motivate you to keep hitting those boulders, right? Well, I would rather be in a state of flow. And what that means is, as I come up along those boulders, I have a clear idea of where I want to go. I've set my desired outcomes. And instead of swimming up to those boulders and bloodying myself, I float to the right or to the left around those boulders. I keep getting where I'm going. I wave at those hustle and grind people and they're all bloody and I flow where I want to go. But to do this requires setting your long-term outcomes. Mm-hmm. And people are really good at setting their BHAGs, their big, hairy, audacious goals, their New Year's resolutions, their big goals. Mm-hmm. And what happens is they obsess about those goals every day. And so when you obsess about the goals, you're grasping. That leads to cortisol rise. When your cortisol rises, You're actually dumber, you're more tense. So they never get it done. And then it becomes December 15th.
And you're attaching the wrong emotion to your goal.
Exactly.
So when you do achieve your goal, you're all tense and stressed out.
Yeah. Now, when you set your desired outcomes, you can create an emotion of joy and happiness and excitement. But the key then is reverse engineer it. Reverse engineer that long-term goal set every month, every week, and every day. You know, just the few outcomes you need to achieve to move toward it. And when you do that, you forget about the big goal.
Right.
I know, like for instance, I have a big goal of having 5,000 discussions with people this year, conversations. We talked about this offline. Mm-hmm. Now, to do that, I just have to have 20 today. You know, and so I just focus on today instead of, oh my gosh, tomorrow. And what are we going to do Thursday? And what are we going to do Friday? Because when people do that, then they're grasping for those results. You also have to realize, and to Hussein's point, when you obsess about results, not only does it lead to grasping and, you know, tension and cortisol rise and stress, and you're less effective, but there are things out of your control. And so you can do what you can do, but you know, leading up to COVID, I was doing a lot of live events, bringing in 200-300 people, et cetera, et cetera. Well, COVID happened. Guess what? Can't do live events anymore. So I saw the boulder and I went to the right, I went to the left, I started doing virtual events. I grew my business. And so you float around it. One last thing, it's interesting that we're having this discussion because my wife and I were just talking about this morning. And you know, we have 4 children now. It's 15 years later, but 16 years ago, we tried for years to get pregnant. Couldn't do it. And it led to stress. We had a miscarriage. It was, oh my gosh, where are we going to do it? We tried all these things and we're grasping. Then finally we said, maybe it's not in our plan. And we signed up for adoption. We signed up and the next day my wife was pregnant and we had our now 15-year-old daughter. We stopped grasping, right? And that's one of the keys. Define what you want, reverse engineer it, put together those daily actions to get there and let it be. Follow those actions, but don't get so tense and motivated, you know, and allow it to happen.
Yeah. You hit on something very, very important here. I'd like to stress for those of you tuning in now or later, allowing it. Because what we do, and you're dead on, this is what we typically do. And share with me, those of you tuning in, you know, if this sounds familiar to you, because this is what I used to do. And I think pretty much everybody does. So we have this goal, whatever it is. Maybe it's that weekly goal, or maybe it's a monthly goal, or maybe it's just a thing you're working on, right? And you're focused on it. And you wake up every day and you're thinking about this thing all the time. And chances are you're not thinking every second of the day, but it comes up frequently and you're worrying about it. You say you're concerned about it. You're worrying on it. You're ruminating on this thing. Well, here's the deal. There's a universal law that should be taught in kindergarten, but for some reason isn't. I don't need to go there. But there's a universal law. That which you invest energy in, you will receive. So where you go in your life is based on the energy you put forth. Okay, that's universal law. It doesn't matter what you believe or what religion you're in, that's a universal law. So what are we doing? We have this goal and we're worrying, ruminating, and we're concerned about it. So what energy are you putting forth towards the goal? Are you putting forth positive energy? Heck no! You're scared. You got fear pumping out of your veins so fast, it's not even funny. We're great at being fear promoters. We're good at that. We're good at emoting fear. So, but we don't realize that's what we're doing. We think I'm just, just want to make sure I'm avoiding risk. And there's nothing wrong with making sure that we avoid obvious risks. We don't want to be an idiot about it. But there's a different thing about the emotion you're attaching to it and the energy by which you're putting forth. That's very, very important. When I set my plans, I set my intention, I attach the right emotion I want according to that plan. All right. So emotion and the action or the results are very important. They're very, very important. And I can get into the neuroscience of why, but it's very important. And then I let it go. I do my best not to think about it all the time. And God forbid, worry about it. I just take the right actions. And by letting it go, I'm not cluttered and distracted by all this self-made stuff that I'm coming up with that distracts me. So I can't see the opportunities that are in front of me. I'm not allowing myself to flow. Because we like to plan everything in the level of minutia. And we don't need to.
Yeah. And when you talk about emotion, emotion actually leads to chemical reactions in our body. Mm-hmm. For good or for bad, if you're married or have a significant other, sometimes you have a chemical reaction based on an emotion that you have, right? Well, I won't go down that line, but also if you're angry at someone, right, you have a chemical emotion, the cortisol rises, right? Well, your body, just like any drug, doesn't know the difference between some of those emotions, positive or negative, versus caffeine or alcohol or a drug. And you can literally become addicted to it. And I think we've seen that a lot. You talked about the overstimulation and trying to turn that off, but especially over the last 2 years, where people feel they become addicted to the news and the negativity and this and that, and I got to be right. And it's like, you look at like even LinkedIn, right? Or certainly Twitter. And I try to use third-party tools when I go there. Why? Because they have these in the news columns. Yeah. And it's like, I don't care if an algorithm's writing them, a bot or a person. If it's a bot, it's the most depressed, angry bot ever. But you look, it's never like run-of-the-mill news. It's always something designed to get an emotion out of you so you click. But here's what happens, and I'm a big fan of the Taoists talk about this, how Jesus talks about that, renunciation, which doesn't mean going and living like a hermit, but what it means is you can be in this world, but not of this world. So craziness is going on around you, but here's what happens a lot, right? We see a little news tidbit. Instead of being aware, we click on it, we read it.
We engage. There's a difference between observing and engagement.
But then we marinate in it, right? Because then it's angry and we feel it's our duty to be angry and marinate, because if I don't know what's going on and every detail of what's going on and the cause of this celebrity death and what happened over here and what's happening.
If I don't react, I'm not being a responsible citizen.
Exactly. And then someone's sitting next to us and we're like, did you see what happened? No. And you bring them in and then you start having this discussion.
Because you don't want to be negative alone.
Exactly. So it's a virus, right? You spread that negativity virus. So now you have a number of people that have their emotions up. You've not only wasted 20 minutes or a half hour of your day that could be spent on something else, but now you've changed your thought pattern and your emotions. And like you said, like it or not, you attract that which you focus on. So if you're focusing on sickness and you're focusing on a fight and you're focusing on anger, guess what? That's what you're going to get.
That's what you're going to surround yourself with. And that's the results you will see. Like it or not, this is a universal law. That which you put forth is what you will receive. Full stop. Doesn't matter what you believe in. Doesn't matter religious you're in. Doesn't matter anything. Where you come from, it doesn't matter. That is the universal law. And what we do is we are putting out all the wrong energy We're focused on the wrong types of emotions. When we think about our goals, when we think about what we need to do, we're anxious, we're worked up, we're concerned. We have negative emotions attached to it. So what does that do neurologically? Well, what it does is you're creating scripts in your mind, because again, your brain doesn't know the difference between good emotion or bad emotion. Your brain hasn't labeled that. You have. There's a difference. But your body doesn't know, well, this chemical reaction is good or that one's bad. It doesn't care. Okay, but what you're doing is you're creating scripts in your mind saying, okay, well, when it comes to this goal, I need to feel this way. That's bad. Because what your brain does is a very advanced filter, and then it starts filtering out all the circumstances where you might feel otherwise and showing you or letting you see the circumstances that reinforce the negative feelings that you've associated with whatever it is you're doing. And that's the way it works, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. That's the way it works. And more people should know this, because I think they would think differently about how they respond, what emotions they choose, and their perspective. They might be more intentional about it. Because we're not intentional about it, we don't get great results, But yeah. It's kind of, I know it's like deep silence. Wait a minute, Erin just dropped a big scientific bomb on our head. What happened? But yeah, it's a thing. It's something we really need to pay attention to.
On that point, I find that there's a lot of people who read that they should do affirmations, right? And first they don't do the zeroing out, so they put the water on top of the dirt and they make mud.
Yeah.
But when they do affirmations, it's no different than people who sit worrying about the news or getting sick or something, right? So they make it of, my affirmation is, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get sick, right?
You're focusing on sick.
You're focusing on sick, right? Or I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to get healthy. When I do my affirmations, every morning I get up and I meditate, quiet, the darkness, but I sit there. And Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk, and I follow his version of meditation, where I sit there and I start out by focusing on my breath. It comes from my belly, 2 inches below the belly button, about 2 inches back. And as I breathe in from my belly, I say, as I breathe in, I smile. I don't say it, I think it. As I breathe out, I relax. And by focusing on my breath, I start to zero out, oh my gosh, I got to send that email today. Oh, I forgot to send that. I make that call yesterday. All that. And I sit there until nothingness occurs. And I sit there in nothingness, in relaxation, and my body just becomes kind of limp. Once I get to that point and I get to zero, then I start doing some affirmations. But the affirmations are not centered around I'm not going to, or they're not centered around I'm going to. They're centered around
It is.
I am.
Yeah.
I focus on I am. I am energy. I am joyful and relaxed. One of the things I say from a business perspective, I am prosperity, and I attract people to me. I'm going to book a call today. Every time I do that, I book a call. And some of it is, not some of it. It is the energy I'm putting out, right? I'm focused on it. But as you and I have discussed before too, listen, if you want to strip away the metaphysics of it, I'm focused on that. And so all my micro actions throughout the day follow up with that. My content that I produce, the calls, I have my tone of my voice and all of that. So is there energy and metaphysics here? Yes, 100%. But if you can't wrap your mind around that, guess what? It's basic psychology.
Neuroscience.
Your physical nature.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you look, some people are like, oh, that's too woo-woo for me. Well, actually, you can break it down scientifically as well. And because I do have a lot of folks who are STEM professionals in my circle, and, I'd like to approach it from the neuroscience standpoint, understanding that scientifically, basically what you're doing when you're lowering the brain waves, when you're doing, let's look at it from a scientific standpoint. What's Curt doing scientifically? Well, basically what Curt's doing is he's pressing the reset button on his processor. You know how sometimes when your phone, your smartphone does a diagnostic, mine does it every Sunday and tells me you need to restart your phone, or you used your phone so many hours or whatever. Well, if you're restarting your phone, you're resetting, you're dumping your cache, right? That's all that clutter and all the junk. Basically, that's what you're doing mentally. You're hitting a reset. You're resetting your body, getting to zero and clearing space. And in that clear space, then your cognitive function can be much more efficient, much more effective. It's not being redirected. So there's a lot of redirects when you're worrying about trying to hold a lot in short-term memory, trying to worry about all the things at the same time. You're having a lot of redirects cognitively. And what that does is actually wears you down mentally and lowers your ability to have top peak cognitive function. The other thing he's doing is he's setting the right mental programs. So we all have mental programs, all of us. I mean, when we're born, as Curt mentioned, we were no programs. Well, as we experience life, we develop programs, and some of these are useful, right? How many of you have ever driven somewhere and were busy thinking about something and arrived and or like, I don't remember driving? That's a useful program. It stopped you from dying, okay? So that mental program took over, and a part of your brain drove you wherever you were going, while another part of your brain was worrying on whatever it was that you were thinking about. It happens, right? I'm sure that this has happened to you. So these are sometimes useful programs because it would be really time consuming to have to retrain yourself every morning how to brush your teeth, how to boil water, how to make coffee. So we have these mental scripts for a good reason. However, your brain doesn't say, oh, well, we'll have mental scripts for these things, but not these other things. You have a mental script for everything. So making sure that your mental script is the script you want versus the script you don't want is very important, because what that does is, and your brain is trained to say, oh, okay, so Curt wants XYZ calls and he wants this type of outcome. Therefore, I will show him those opportunities. He's allowing it to happen. I will show him these, because if Curt said, oh, well, gosh, I'm really worried that I might not get these calls, and the brain's going, oh, okay, so he doesn't want to get the calls.
Right. Yeah. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who I know you're a fan of as well.
Mm-hmm.
And what he likes to point out is that 90% of our thoughts are the same from day to day. Our thoughts tomorrow are going to be 90% the same as today. Well, if you're not getting the results you want, however, you keep doing the same thing over and over and having the same thoughts, yep, your thoughts lead to those actions, but lead to those results. And so even as simple as, I usually get up at 7:30 every day and I make the coffee and I take the same route to work, switch it up, just change. Sometimes we need a pattern interrupt, and something as simple as what time you get up may lead to a whole chain of events that lead you to have those same thoughts. And so, it's garbage in, garbage out, or great stuff in, great stuff out, quite honestly.
And the choice is yours. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't like the results you're getting, but your thoughts are the same, but you refuse to change those thoughts, then you're going to get the same results whether you like them or not.
All right. Yeah. And it's not necessarily like I posted yesterday, not all growth is found outside your comfort zone. We like to say, oh, well, all true growth is outside your comfort zone. That's actually not true, because there's a difference between a comfort zone as a zone of stagnation and your zone of genius, which is your zone where you're leveraging your strengths, your gifts, your talents in a beautiful, harmonious, aligned way. Okay. Now, a zone of genius is where you are operating intentionally based on your values, your priorities, what's important to you, knowing yourself. So as we mentioned before, when we first started chatting, knowing self is the first step, because Curt's method of meditating in the morning may not work for you.
Right.
My method of creating, mindset, mindlessness routine in the morning may not work for you. I also break several times during the day and do that mindlessness technique to clear the cache. So because during the day, things are going and more things and more things and more things and more things. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, it's time to clear space. Right. So I can focus on which things are important because I can't prioritize if they're all buzzing around in my brain. Right. Yeah. So we all have a routine that works for us. Which one works for you is very important based on your authentic self. And that's one reason why I feel that a lot of the guru books, follow my methodology. One of my clients loves the Miracle Morning. It's a super complex thing. I'm like, there's no way I could fit that in my morning. That's just not me. So you need to find something that works for you. And I encourage you to try different things that work for you and resonate for you so you can show up. But the very first thing is understanding who you are and setting boundaries on what type of input you will allow and what you don't allow. Take, for example, in this house, there is no morning news. Absolutely none. And that's on purpose. Mm-hmm. Because we are a product of our inputs. And I don't need to hear negativity first thing in the morning.
Yeah. And you can't fully avoid inputs, but it's what you choose, like you say, to engage in. One thing I'll add too is that with everything we're talking about and a mindlessness practice or a mindfulness practice, which in the end should actually be the same thing, right? Because you got to get mindless to get mindful. You got to zero it out. You got to get,
most people don't bother to do that.
Yeah. Is that one of the, and I have been guilty of this, is you go into a practice. Let's say you go into a meditation with, like we go into everything else. I'm going to win. I'm going to do it. I'm going to work harder. And I have to, so-and-so got this result. And oh my gosh, I read this story about someone who went into the fifth dimension while they were meditating, and that has to happen to me. And so we go into it with this goal.
Competitive.
Yeah. And after 5 minutes, it doesn't work. And I have people say, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And you keep using that word, which is so key, which is allow. And allow it to happen. And for someone like me, and perhaps you, we've kind of commented back and forth on this, I wake up, my mind is on fire. I'm ready to go, go, go. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about how people traditionally talk about, say, like a comfort zone, some mornings, the last thing I want to do is get up, sit on my meditation pillow and zero out. That is like going out in the cold for a run. But I know that it's so important to the rest of my day that's where the discipline comes in. It's not like go, 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 but it's the discipline of having a process. And I call it a mindless process, where a lot of anxiety can come in the morning when you wake up and you don't know what you have to do in the day. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs like that, right? I want freedom. And so I want to take the day as it comes, and I don't know what to do for sales. I don't have a process. I don't do this. That's what we talked about. You set your goal, but then you focus on the daily process. So when I wake up, I know exactly what I need to do. It becomes part of my subconscious programming. I've reprogrammed. So I get up, I meditate, I go through kind of process where I don't have to think about it. I love it. It works for me. But then I know I do my calls. Before we got on here, I called 11 people, had discussions, booked a call. It wasn't like stressing out. I wasn't forcing anything. I'm introducing myself like a human. Now we're here. I have that process that I do every day. It's not sexy. It's not based on intensity. It's based on consistency. And when you're consistent, you don't have to stress about it. When you're consistent, you learn what works, then you can optimize and grow. But a lot of it is allowing, because I can go through my process and I can focus on the things that I know I need to do every day. I'm not going to get, to Hussein's point, the results.
Right.
What if my power goes out? What if a bomb goes off? What if I remember that day when all of a sudden I couldn't go to work and do my projects at the office because 9/11 and they closed our bit? Things are going to happen.
It was a horrible day. Yeah.
You just get back on track. You focus on your process and you allow. But I think that takes realizing that trying to control life, Alan Watts, Bruce Lee has talked about this as well. When you're out in water, right? Try and grasp the water. You can't just go and grasp the water, but you can float on it. You can allow the water to clear up and become more calm. And so I think we've been convinced that we're separate from the world, we're separate from nature, and that we're humans and we can control it. And the more we try to do that, the more stressed we become, the more overstimulated we become, because we see the news and we think we can control the world by fretting about the news. And so less control, more allowing, and having that kind of mindset will lead to lower the temperature, lower the cortisol. It makes it easier in the morning or throughout the day to get to mindlessness, because then you're allowing and realizing, listen, there's certain things I can control. There's certain things I can't control, but I can focus on.
Focus on what matters.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I want to come back to a comment Mariama shared a little while ago, how do you stay in the flow and not get demotivated? And while she later commented that she saw what we meant, I like to come back to that really quickly, because when we think about motivation, we think of it as something that happens to us. Motivation is something you happen to it. It doesn't happen to you. So back to your point, Curt, in some mornings where when I get out of bed, my brain is immediately on. Now, it's better than it used to be because I've been working on my programming quite a bit. So I'm better at being able to go, feeling it start to spin and then just go, nope.
Right.
I will focus on being present, how comfortable my sheets are, how comfortable my bed is, enjoying the sunrise coming through my window. And then I will do my mindlessness program. And then I will go through, my visualization and what I want to accomplish today. But it's a process of coming out of something very pure, then developing into what do I want to do that day, not the other way around. Right. Not waking up going, oh my gosh, and then trying to find space in that. It's very difficult. So you happen to motivation. It does not happen to you. And some mornings, I know I've got a lot to do. I also know that I will not show up 100% if I don't have that foundational work done. Now, I'd like to make sure before we close out the coffee chat today that we focus on doing the right actions, because obviously we have this foundation and we have this practice to keeps us in our zone of genius, keeps us at 100% every day of every year. And we also very much focused on doing the right actions for the right results, because I would have to say that a lot of people, everybody that I coach, spends quite a bit of their time on actions that don't necessarily yield a lot of ROI. Now, yes, we all have email. That's probably the first thing you were thinking about, all the emails you have to plow through in a given day. So working out a system, what does that look like? I had to be very hard on myself. I'm like, I want to save all these emails because I think I'm going to read them later. Delete. I know I'm not going to read them later. Then, I just have to do a mass delete and get to the ones that really matter. Or maybe there's a different process for you, but focusing on the right actions for the right results. And if you're thinking about your career, what is my goal, right? Is it aligned with who I am? So there's a lot of nuances in there, because whether you're a W-2 professional or you're self-employed, are you focusing on the right thing that's aligned with who you are? That, you honors your gifts and talents and strengths, and having that right action for the right results, and not spending a lot of time spending your energy on complexity that may not necessarily even be necessary based on what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. Setting an intention is very important for how you want your day to be. I really rely on motivation when I set my intention or I set my outcomes. I let that emotion and motivation, because I know that if I just have to rely on pure motivation each day, it ain't going to work. So some of that's, as someone posted recently on LinkedIn about, is your desk cluttered or not? And I've read studies and this and that, and I have a standing desk with nothing. The reason I do that is because I know if I rely on the motivation, I'm going to fight myself all day to not sit at a desk. So I have a standing desk. I'm actually talking to you on it right now, where I can't really do much. It's uncomfortable. I do that because I don't want to rely on motivation. So I set guardrails that allow me just to do it. and I'm getting exercise, I'm walking around. And so, that motivation each day, but I have an intention, like I mentioned, some days I get up and I don't want to sit on the pillow and meditate. But I've set an intention. My intention for the year is I am joyful and relaxed. Every day, I am joyful and relaxed. What is going to help me get there? Is it just getting up, not doing my meditation practice, sitting on the couch, drinking coffee, and then getting stressed? Not going to happen. So sometimes, it's easy to say, well, you said to allow, and it's really not in my essence to allow myself to exercise. It's not in my essence to allow myself to call people. And that's rationalization.
That's
right?
Rationalizing not doing the right actions for the right results.
Exactly. Other days where I don't feel like going to the gym, of course. But you know what? The toughest thing is getting up and going. Once you're there, I love the way it makes me feel because it helps me toward my intention. And even if I just go for 20 minutes, because it's that consistency. Mm-hmm. So, I have a different take, not than you. I think we have the same take on motivation than most people. Where it's like, I got to get up every day and I'm going to put my head through a wall. And it's like, I got to drink coffees for closers and I'm going to drink the coffee. And it's like,
yeah, that's funny because I see people are like in two different camps. They're either making excuses or they're true gritters. And it's not too many people that know that the real answer is somewhere in the middle. It's not forcing yourself to do things that are outside your strength zone and draining your energy constantly. That's not the answer. And it's also not just pushing through without being clear on the why. That's not the answer.
Right.
But the answer is in the middle. Like the answer is not in the true grit camp. I'm just going to beat my head against the wall until something happens. Usually you end up passing out. But it's also not making a bunch of excuses why I can't go to that networking event or why I can't send that email to my colleague about an opportunity maybe at their company. Why I can't put my hat in the ring for a job that I might not get, but I might talk to the right people. There's a whole lot of excuses we can come up with that stop us from taking the right actions to get the right results.
Yeah, that's where discernment comes in. Knowing the rationalization and the BS beliefs from the actual what's going to happen. And it's like, it's not in my essence today to go to the gym. It's not in my essence today to do this or that. And it's like, all right, I need to discern right now. Am I lazy? Or literally, do I have a little injury? Did I tweak my back yesterday and it's good? Mm-hmm. Once you start to know yourself and be able to listen to yourself, that discernment becomes much easier. And also understanding what some other well-intentioned people or even very intelligent people might tell you. Because, I'll use nutrition as an example. I have a certain nutritional practice that I think is great and it's wonderful. But I have everyone tell me, no, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this.
Right. And that's one thing that, with both of us, you'll notice we're talking about some things that are pretty fundamental. And that's on purpose. We're not trying to sell you our program. I'm not trying to sell you and you should do everything I should do. I will share with you, here's some things that work for me, but that's not implying that it's going to be 100% for you. That's why I break it down to the fundamentals. Okay, this is the universal truths. These are the neuroscience. This is how it works. Then you, as a whole, complete, competent, resourceful human being that you are, can then take that knowledge and say, okay, cool. So I know the why. Now I can create something that works for me, right?
Yeah.
And that's one reason why, God bless a lot of these people who are trying to help, and they honestly are. A lot of them are just trying to make a buck, but I've been there, and I've actually been a victim of that too. I have this program, and yada yada. Whatever sales spiel, and no, it doesn't work because it's some complexity that works for only them and their niche and whatever. It does not apply to me. Right? You see it all the time. So when it comes to aligning your zone of genius, it's like the nutrition program you have, Curt. That works for you because you're a unique individual.
Right.
Everybody is. So knowing what works for you is really important, and knowing where your goals are and how to reverse engineer, as you mentioned earlier on in our program, that's also really important. But these are fundamentals. And the thing about it is, it's being ruthless about applying those fundamentals. That's where we don't do a good job, necessarily. So,
And at the very beginning of your thoughts and the emotions, right? You zero out and you focus, I am. But one of the things, and you get what you focus on, right? You put your energy somewhere. One thing that I see a lot with clients or potential clients is the self-sabotage before you even get there of, Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He writes in his book, he had his rich dad and his poor dad. His poor dad was actually his biological father, who said, I don't know how to make money. Don't ask me. I've worked as a bureaucrat. His best friend's dad was a developer and was the rich dad, and so became his mentor. He loved his biological dad, but the rich dad was his mentor. One of the things he said was, the rich dad said, you are no longer allowed to say, I can't afford this. Instead, when you look at something you want, you say, how can I afford this? Now you apply that to other things. I have clients who it's like, hey, here's, maybe you try picking up the phone or sending a LinkedIn voice message or outreaching.
I can't do that.
I can't do that. Instead, switching, and there are people who reflexively say that to everything. I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. Switch it up. It's so small, yet so powerful. Instead of saying, I can't do that, use your creative power. Your creative flow is the most potent superpower that every individual has. I grew up Catholic. We learned the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. And in that it says, give us this day our daily bread. And we were taught that give us this day our daily bread means get down on bended knee and beg for scraps. I truly have come to believe that each of us has that daily bread. It's our creative power. We have the ability to think our way creatively out of everything. If we didn't, we wouldn't be here. We would have never made it out of the caves. There were monsters, literal monsters that would have crushed us, right? Everything, fire, the environment. We used our creativity to thrive. We've had, 4 extinction events? And we're still here, not because of our brawn, because of our creative thinking. But when you shut yourself down and you say, I can't do this, you're shutting off your creative power. It's a no period. It's like an improv. You always say yes and. So instead of saying, I can't do this, say, how can I do this? How can I make that happen? You are requiring yourself to use your creative power to think your way out of that issue. Dr. Joe Vitale, who I'm having on my podcast next week, he says, you don't need more money. Most people say, I need more money. I need more money. No, you need more creativity. You got to allow that creativity because every single human being has the creative power to think, to create whatever it is they want. You just got to make sure you're not blocking that power on the front end.
That's right. Now, and being very conscious of the language we choose, the mindset scripts we have, what's falling out of our face when we talk. That's really important because your brain is listening. You are listening to that, and your brain is literal. It doesn't understand sarcasm. So be cautious about what you are articulating verbally or mentally. What are those scripts? What is it telling you? And is it supporting or sabotaging your goals? And understanding who you are. That's so important. Just simple things, and before I wrap up our show today, and we've had a great conversation, so we're almost at an hour, so we definitely want to wrap up this show with a positive note. But, as some of you know, my mother moved near us. We moved her from Virginia to Texas about a year ago. And it's been very interesting because she has lived not, largely alone the past couple of years because she didn't want to move. So I'm glad she's here now because I'm helping her see that some of her scripts are based in fear and scarcity. A lot of fear and scarcity. So seeing that and having someone reflect maybe on what you're saying and challenging you is also helpful too. If you have someone who's conversant and understanding what your goals are and conversant and understanding, maybe what you're saying isn't supporting you. Because sometimes, it's automatic. We don't even recognize it. We don't even recognize it. We don't even recognize it ourselves sometimes. So having someone, a support group, is oftentimes very powerful too.
Absolutely.
So any last thoughts, Curt, before we wrap up the show today?
Yeah, I think, on that last part, having a kind of external GPS system, could be a friend, could be a mentor, could be a coach, could be just like you said, a group, a mentor group. With some of my clients, the first couple sessions, I start off, and I do this intentionally by saying, how you doing today? And I can tell if they are in that subconscious kind of treadmill of answering with, well, I'm not feeling so great today. I'm not feeling so great. And by the third time, I then have a conversation with them of, every time I ask you, you are speaking into existence, lack, poor health, I don't feel good, somebody and they don't even realize they're doing it. And so by pointing that out, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. And you gotta make sure if you're doing it with a friend that you don't do it in a judgmental way. You have to do it in a way that if they're open to it, really pointing out, because again, sometimes I'll say things and I don't even know I said it. My wife will point out, do you know that you said this? I'm like, yeah, I'm speaking into existence, poor energy. So that conversation we have with ourself, like you said, the beginning, knowing ourselves, but that conversation we have with ourselves every day, every minute, throughout the day is the most important conversation we can have each and every day.
Yep, absolutely. So for those of you tuning in now or later, it's been a deep pleasure sharing time with you. Curt, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom and how you've stayed in your zone of genius, 365 days out of the year, and what is important to you, and help you thrive and help your clients thrive too. Of course, connect with Curt on LinkedIn. He's out there. He's on LinkedIn quite a bit and sharing some really meaningful and powerful, and I would have to say transformational insights, shaking up the status quo, not just accepting the way we've always done it as the way we need to keep doing it, because it's not. We're in a state of rapid change. So knowing how we can thrive through this transformation and most importantly, honor ourselves, our authentic selves, so we can achieve our goals and have a happier, just live our best life, right? So that's what we're here to do. So thank you again, Curt. Thanks for all of you for tuning in now or later. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll comment on the show, send me an in-mail, send Curt an in-mail. We're here to help you thrive. And most importantly, for all of you tuning in now or later, friends, keep elevating.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Aaron Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.